This podcast contains adult language and themes that may be unsuitable for some listeners. You've been warned.
God made one, God made two, God made the heavens and he called them blue. But the devil made the world when God wasn't looking.
Get ready to challenge your own opinions and ideas, because these folks are going there. Taboo topics are back on the table.
The devil made the world when God wasn't looking.
Hey there, I'm LaJohn.
I'm Joe.
And I'm Matt, and this is the Going There podcast. Today we're here to talk about a taboo topic that shouldn't be so taboo because it's probably the only guarantee we have in life anymore. It used to be the saying, the only two guarantees are death and taxes. And as we've seen, if you're rich and powerful, taxes are not necessarily a guarantee either. And here to talk through death with us is somebody who sees it on a regular basis. Mr. Shannon Blower, thank you so much for being here with us today.
It's my pleasure. And yeah, right. It's a crazy freaking topic to talk about, you know, a taboo for sure. And I'm glad to brighten the corner.
Well, we definitely appreciate you being here, sir, regardless of, the circumstance and everything, and taking the time for us, and looking forward to picking your brain about this very interesting and very intriguing topic.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
So before we jump in head first, can you go ahead and tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, certainly. So I am someone who has been in ministry, goodness, for 30 plus years anyway. And much of it has been as a community pastor. More recently, the last 12 years, I have been in clinical work in acute care hospital as a palliative chaplain. I was doing some clinical education for chaplains in training for a while. And right now I am working in a local community hospital, level 1 trauma center that is just about at capacity, with so many of our patients being COVID patients, folks that are ill and dying of COVID. And it's a heavy burden, I don't mind telling you.
I can't imagine what it's like as a doctor, but especially as somebody in your position, to take that home with you every day and try to compartmentalize it.
Well, and candidly, I think the art is not to do that. The art is to integrate it and to become as comfortable or familiar and emotionally present to the suffering that's going on around us. I suppose that the greatest hardship is to try and communicate to loved ones and family members who are isolated one form or another, to try and enforce policies that are for the good of everyone. But it doesn't feel like that when your loved one is dying and you have not seen them in 30 plus days. There's a whole breadth of anger and sadness and heartbreak and frustration from everybody involved. So to compartmentalize that is to delay a big explosion later on. It's not good for any of us.
How frustrating must it be to continue to see COVID kill, essentially, yet people on the outside of what you see still just don't believe and don't understand how serious it is? How frustrating does that get on a daily basis?
Their experience is just simply not seeing the suffering that goes on with a patient who dies of the virus. So it's frustrating, and yet in some odd way, I got to tell you the truth, I kind of understand it. It's implicit to every problem we have in our country: racism, homophobic. On every level, it is the same sort of dilemma, which is I stay isolated in my tiny little world. If I don't experience it, it's not true. And so it becomes this sort of undergirding narrative to all of the me first concept or me first disposition that is rampant in our country.
You're spot on, and it's a topic I probably comes up in every episode here. Before we go too much deeper down that rabbit hole, I wanted to possibly have you clarify a little bit. You touched on it, but some people might not realize what your role in the hospital system looks like. Can you talk to that just a little bit, even high level?
Yeah, so I am the palliative chaplain, which means that I am accustomed to helping families, individuals, receive a diagnosis that is difficult, if not terminal, to walk them through the prognosis, and to help and be present with social workers and physicians and nursing and APPs and across the scope of things. We help people come to terms with this and then help them manage this process of going through this dying process to ultimately ending up in hospice. But palliative is that in-between ground. So death and dying is not something that is novel to me, although each person presents in a unique way, but we're accustomed to it. What we're not accustomed to are the circumstances that surround this particular time in our country. We're not accustomed to keeping families apart. So much is communicated through touch or these different things like that candidly we're not able to connect that way with folks, and that's a whole nother level of disorienting sadness.
So you and I were talking about this on the phone the other day, kind of discussing how we would approach the topic of death. And I think you laid out for me something that I had never heard, but it was very well, it's very intuitive, and it's obviously coming from your experience.
Well, hell, I don't know, Matt. That's been days ago. I don't remember what the hell I said, even this morning. So tee me up better than that shit, man. Tell me what it said.
You get to have the fortune or misfortune of seeing people on their deathbed and seeing their families do it, shed a light on I guess a pattern of different things that you've seen from that end.
I'm fond of saying to folks that anybody who thinks they're an expert on death are folks that have not died. The experts on death are in the bed, and their books and their story is rarely written. And so what I see is people die how they've lived, and that's there's no judgment of that. That's just simply the way it is.
I will die in my sweatpants.
There you go, man. But I mean, really, we can kind of play around with this, and we asked the question, even to you three there. What do you anticipate your death will look like?
Ooh, I know when I die, it's going to be something that make the royal wedding just look like a sham. There's going to be trumpeters, people just shouting from the rooftops of how great a man I am. But that's my funeral. I haven't thought about, you know what? I'm such a future seeker and a future liver. It's actually surprising that I haven't put much thought into what happens when I die.
Man, I think about that shit every day.
Tell us.
I hope that I die with my boots on fire, meaning that I did everything, and the streets will owe me nothing because I took everything from them. That's how I feel. I mean, I feel like, I could be on my deathbed and everything. I'm not married now. If I was to be married or whatever, or looking at my kids,
after his third divorce, I mean, he's going to be
mid-coitus.
Right. I can look at, my wife or my mistress and say, hey, listen, we did a good job, didn't we? We had fun, didn't we? Yeah, we did it good. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like the most comfortable would be just to die in your sleep, but I'm dramatic, so maybe something crazy will happen.
It'll be a temper tantrum. She'll be mid-temper tantrum.
I'll be mid-temper tantrum. Hopefully my hair will look good, though, and I will be wearing clothes where it won't look bad if they get soiled. No, I honestly don't know, and I'm terrified of it, and I think a lot of it is because our society doesn't ever acknowledge death or talk about it. It's always something that's, put off. And then when you do die, often you die in a hospital alone. Perhaps your family comes to visit you, but, you sequester. And then, when the body dies, you pump it full of embalming fluid and have some weird ceremony that
Very
doesn't make
scientific.
sense.
Yeah, true. And so one of the things that I noticed in each one of your descriptions, although Joe, you were a little bit more personal. Each
Thank you.
one of you, each
I
one
failed.
of you, used a third person description. You talked about yourself as if you were reading some sort of glorious thing in the newspaper, or
Well, that's a personality disorder I have.
So my point is, when you say, or when we ask the question, we talk about, well, how is it that we want to die, or what is it that we anticipate death will be like? It is such a freaking unknown. It's almost impossible to answer the question. The themes are that each individual who dies in such a unique way. When they are feeling every single thing go away, when they hear, now again, you die in a car accident, that's a whole different animal. But you die in the context in which I work, it sounds like you hear a diagnosis. And like all good Americans, man, we're going to fight it. And that's good. It's fine. Medicine has brought us a certain way. But then medicine reaches its shore. And we are forced to address the fact that our lives are temporary. And in so many ways, we don't really know jack shit about what happens after we die. And we don't know what is going to happen when we're dying.
I feel like religion and myth, so much of it is based off of trying to accept death. Do you think, as a chaplain, that you would agree, or do you think that a lot of these people might not be viewing death in, that way?
Someone once said that human existence is like a book that is missing the first chapter and the last chapter. In other words, we're here, but we kind of don't know how we got here. We know we die, but we don't have a sense about what happens after we die. And so because of that, there is just a boatload of existential angst. There's this, and so what do? Well, you make up story, you make up myth, you imagine. So much of our lives are lived by narrative and imagination. And so when we think about what's going to happen after we die, it only stands to reason that there are just tons and tons and tons of religious and philosophical literature that is going to try and assuage and calm the minds and hearts of folks that are facing death. And each political system has their own narrative. Trust me, capitalism has its too, right? Everyone has their own narrative to keep people in the saddle and living and producing. But in the end, Joe, it is myth, it is religion, it is narrative, it is whatever story we are telling ourselves to make us feel better about what we do not know.
Have you guys ever seen the film, I think it was called The Invention of Lying?
No, but it sounds lovely.
Who was it?
It's got Ricky Gervais.
Yes.
And lying has never existed in this universe. And he goes to the bank, and since lying doesn't exist, when he says he has $1 million or whatever amount it is, they're like, oh, okay, yeah, well, there must be an error. But there's a beautiful scene that I think that maybe a more pious, cynical person would see it as like bad and atheist, but his mom is dying and no one knows what happens. And since people can't lie or make things up, no one's ever really asked the question because there is no answer. And so he tells her, essentially about heaven, about this afterlife. It's the most beautiful thing she's ever heard. And all these people are there to hear it. And they're like, tell us more about this. And suddenly the world's looking to him like, what is this afterlife? Where's this cloud place that we're going to? And at the same time, whether or not you believe in that, you sit there, at least I did as a viewer, and I go, damn, I hope he's right. That sounds great.
That's, Matt, you just put your finger on it. That really is it is the truth. It isn't listen, it isn't that that there's not some sense of hope. I truly believe that in terms of a scientific framing of the afterlife, I think physics offers us our best hope for that. And trust me, I'm no whiz in this stuff, but from the standpoint of energy never being lost or created,
Right.
we are energy. That's what we are. And so we're going to go on. How and all of that, we just don't know. That's for sure.
Right. So your body is failing, it's like, as Joseph Campbell would say, you are the light bulb. Are you the light bulb that carries the light, or are you the light in which the bulb is the vehicle?
Yeah.
Which is like, so your consciousness would live on.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And so if I'm not careful, I can give the impression that I'm not tethered to anything. I am quite tethered to the scriptures. What I'm getting at, though, is I take the Bible seriously enough to actually question it. I don't, I take it seriously enough to say, how in the hell can that be true? And then I use that as the platform to look in all the other realms of knowledge and experiences whereby I might say, how could this be true? How might this be so? And I do this not because I think that we can ultimately put our finger on it. I think I do it because of what I do to everybody that I care about. I want to show kindness and love. So your illustration, Matt, and incidentally, when you first talked about it, I heard you say the invention of wine, not the invention of life.
No wonder you got so excited.
And so both were great news. But I guess my point is comfort and hope and trust. These are these abstract qualities of the human spirit that transcend this level of mechanical knowing that we think gives us hope. It doesn't. What gives us hope is trust. It seems like there's more. What that more could be, golly, I have my favorite storylines too.
Yeah, what is something that you often say to people when they are visiting you in the hospital?
Yeah, so a significant part of this work is where they are in their journey. And trust me, you three, you four, and me, we're at a place in our journey. This ship is going to land somewhere, and so wherever they happen to be determines how I engage it. But there's a presupposition that I have, Joe, and here's what it is: that every single person knows their own way out. Like within you is the answer to your own peace. And so a significant part is just me being able to lean into those things that they have been living by. More often than not, people are not aware of the values they live by. They're not aware of the deep truths that have informed their behaviors and actions. They just kind of do it. They just kind of live it, right? If there's some angst, it's when, they were trained to hate gays and LGBTQ and all this, they've been trained to hate that. And then they run into somebody that, damn, they're a nice person. And it's disorienting and they have to call that into question. All of a sudden their experience teaches them something different. So when that goes on, that's this lovely opportunity to draw out the intuitive knowing of each individual. So I believe, Joe, that my first step is to try and ascertain their deepest sense of knowing, what they've been living by, and from there to help frame a way of approaching death that is the way they approach life, right? If they were adventurous, if they were outgoing, who knows what.
So if they were really into money, would you be like, you're going to get the dopest casket? Does Tesla make caskets?
I'm going to be like, dude, man, your money has bought you the best place on the other side you have ever seen. Actually, though, listen, these are just such good insight questions. But what I would do is say that money was symbolic of something to you. Money means something to people. It means something. It might mean safety. It might mean a sense of significance. It might mean, who the hell knows? Each person would have to self-report. But the person who amassed wealth and loved money, it meant something to them. It meant something in the abstract. I would lean into the abstract and say, that is yours by gift and grace. You thought it was yours by earning and trading and striving, but that is yours by gift and grace.
So we're going to take a quick musical break here. And when we come back, we're going to talk about our Snack Sips and Sweets sponsor, which is Wolf Creek Winery. And here's what's crazy. When I asked Shannon to do this episode, I said, you know what? Your son's an awesome musician. He always played at the church with his wife and some of the other family members. And we should get him to do the music. And the name of his band is Wolf Creek.
Get out of here.
Wow.
Talk about kismet. It had to be. So here to tee up his music is actually Shannon's son, Elijah. Elijah, can you tell us a little bit about your band and the song we're about to hear?
My band, we started maybe 5 or 6 years ago with my older brother and my younger brother and my wife. Since then, we've added Sam Wiesand and Ben Grom as extra instrumentalists. But the song that that you're going to hear, "The Year of the Dragon," is a song that I wrote in 2012, about maybe 5 or 6 months after my firstborn son died. And we got 2012 was the Year of the Dragon. If you don't know, Tong is my wife. That's her name. She's Chinese. We did a lot with Chinese zodiacs and stuff. But after my son's name was Eden, after Eden died, our whole life was sort of just so unexpected and was out of nowhere. It came at we were in our most hopeful phase with him. He was born with a rare genetic disease, and he went in for a routine surgery on his heart, and everything went wrong. And the day after they sent him home, when we thought we were done, he just died in our arms at home. And it felt terrible. And so the song, lots of songs came out of it. None of them very hopeful. By the time I got to the Year of the Dragon, a couple more people had passed away that we knew we were close to. And it just felt like everything was falling apart and everything was going away. Like the entire world was had ended. But the song itself is about kind of just saying goodbye. At a certain point, we realized that when we would make our way through feeling angry or despair, Tong and I would often talk about how Eden just was a very, very short gift that we had for the littlest time that we had him. So yeah, I wrote this song singing to him, imagining that he was this person that goes out, allowing us to really love him, but sort of had this mission ahead of him that he knew he wasn't going to be able to come back from. Sort of sang him a hero's song in a way, I guess.
Still you let us know your love for love. Still you gave us everything. Now we sing it, sing a song like the others. It's the year unlike the rest. It's the year of the dragon, and it's coming for the best. Well, I should have seen it coming, but I failed just like the rest. It's the year of the dragon, watch your soul. 'Cause that dragon came to claim
Well, I don't know about you guys, but I think there's no better time for a drink to get through the rest of this topic. So, our snack, sips, and sweets highlight of this podcast is the winery at Wolf Creek. They're in Norton, Ohio. They were founded in 1980 by Andrew Weinberg. Wine spelled W-I-N-E, so it's kind of like meant to happen, right? It's like that's your birthright. On the property of his parents, Melvin and Harriet Weinberg. So they have 10 acres of vineyard planted all at the base of the hill, and it's an awesome place. So they provided us with some really nice snacks. So we got some nice smoked Gouda and some whiskey sticks, which are like sweet and savory all at once, and some nice crackers to go with the cheese. And then we also got a couple of bottles of wine. So, LeJohn, which bottle do you have there?
Now, I've been over here sipping slow on the Nouveau. It's really good, man. It has, of course, two beautiful wolves on the front of the bottle there, and nice red wine. It's traditionally the first wine of the new harvest and bottled by the second week of November to enjoy with roast turkey, honey glazed ham, or a little cranberry relish.
It's a young wine, acidic, but a bit tart. And as you mentioned, it goes perfectly with those turkey dinners and those holiday meals. And then going along with some of these biblical themes of today is the other wine, Joe.
Ooh, Exodus. Glad I've been in the desert for 40 years. I could use a drink. And it's this wine, baby. Yeah, this table wine is inky, smoky, rich. It's a medium-bodied red. And it's gone because I done drank it all.
And we're transitioning from the French to the Italian, which is more my speed. It's got the variety of Italian grapes, and it's also aged with French oak, so we're bringing the French right back into it. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the one thing that we learned about. Do you know how the Super Bowl features the Puppy Bowl?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So the Kentucky Derby, Wolf Creek Winery features the Goat Derby, where they have everyone dressed in their derby attire. It's an event that's free to the public, and they race their goats up a hill on the winery property. How awesome is that?
Wait, in Norton, Ohio?
Why have I never heard about this?
Yeah, why is that?
So you can check them out at winery@wolfcreek.com or go to their Facebook at winery@wolfcreek. And then to leave something so awesome like food and wine and wade our way back into the heavy topic of death. Many people kind of come to the realization, especially after they've experienced so much death, is that there is some form of beauty in it. It means that you've lived. It means that there was something to lose, that you've been loved. How do you see that firsthand, and what have you experienced?
Yeah, so, earlier I talked about being tethered to the scriptures. There's a portion of scripture in Isaiah that just, doggone, it's poetic. And Isaiah, as a prophet, is speaking on behalf of Jehovah God. And he says that I will give you treasures in darkness and riches in secret places. And so no one would ever expect to see beauty, kindness, gentleness, love, these wonderful aspects of grace in such dark and dank places as in the rooms where folks die. And yet, time and time again, it is there. When loved ones are sobbing, it is because they have loved well. Their tears are a reminder of how much they have loved. When we are there, and I pay attention to family members showing one another the most subtle kindnesses, there is a sort of tragic beauty of it that, candidly, without the juxtaposition of such great grief and loss, you wouldn't notice it. I remember being in a room where a young woman was in a car accident, had been married less than a month, and her 22-year-old husband had to make the decision to discontinue life support. Her parents were in the room. She was their child for 24 years, And just several months ago, he now became the one with the authority to make decisions. And that was both a burden and an awful responsibility. It was so many things.
I've met a lot of 22-year-olds. That's not a decision that most of them have to make.
That's exactly right.
Or have the capacity to make
Right.
a decision that big. I couldn't imagine.
Should be ever put in that position to make, Hope. Oh, that's terrible.
And so there he is in that spot. And her parents, who just in a way signed her over to him in such a short while ago, are now powerless to his decision to remove support. And as he sat at that table, and all of us were there, and there was a sacred silence, and as he was weeping, the father of the patient, the father-in-law, walked over to him and placed his hand on his shoulder and said, "Son, it's okay. You'll do what's right." Now, where is that sort of tenderness found, and kindness is found, and gentleness found, save in those very dark spaces? And that's the sacred beauty of being present in such thin places when folks step into eternity.
That really is sacred. Do you think that if death was talked about more commonly in our everyday life, that we would have those moments more often?
I think those moments are for us to be had anytime we're willing to be vulnerable and honest with our own human condition. So death is one way to do it. And being emotionally honest is another way to do it. Most of us live these dualistic lives, one the public self, the other this private self. And in those, in the distance between the two, is the absence of the sacred. So, as we're emotionally honest, I think that's where the magic happens.
You know what? I often tell my children, if death is anything like life before I was born, it can't be that bad, because I don't remember shit anyway.
So listen, man, that's quite an astute philosophical position. For instance, and I wish I could remember the Greek philosopher who said it, but his premise was this: that if there is a life after this death, it is infinitely better than what we have experienced, and if there is not, we won't know it. And so it's okay either way. If there is a God, God is good. If God is not good, if God's an asshole, we're all screwed anyway. Who are we trying to kid?
Me personally, I kind of believe in, and I say this half joking, but reincarnation, because I will honestly share, I don't know that I believe in heaven or hell, or at least in the context that we were taught in Sunday school anymore as an adult. But I do feel the sense for needed universal justice. So like LeJohn, since he's such a horrible being, will come back as like a roll of toilet paper. As myself, I will come back as a very rich man in the future who has several harem rooms. It's going to be a nice afterlife.
And I'll come back as Paula Poundstone.
You don't reincarnate as the same person.
Wait, what? Shannon, can you help explain some stuff?
Well, I better be foreplay. I mean, I want to be the most comfortable role.
That stuff's getting expensive.
You're damn right it is. If it's my afterlife, I want it.
It's your day. Your day is coming.
Have you ever seen a skeleton that wasn't happy? They're always excited and everything. I mean, they
That's
look
exactly right, man.
exactly.
They're
yeah.
always dancing.
They love science. They love high school science.
And knowing LeJohn, when they go to do the autopsy, there'll be a smiling skeleton with a broken pelvic bone.
Just doing our
So,
job.
all right. So, Matt, you may remember this because I think humor is such an important part of all of this. We cannot take ourselves too seriously. My goodness sake. I did a series at the church called The Gospel According to Film. One of the films we used was Steel Magnolias. And the scene in which the mother of the character who had died was just angry and frustrated, and in the midst of that, somebody grabbed another person and say, "I know you want to hit her," and there was just a comedic release to it. It truly all goes together. It must go together. There's a ridiculousness about all of this seriousness by which we take ourselves in as well.
A couple of years ago when I put down my dog, who was like my best friend, the coolest animal in the world, it seems silly talking about it in context of all the things that you've shared, but to me it was my world, right? And it's all what they are to us. And I almost threw up in the parking lot afterwards. It was the hardest cry I've ever made in my adult life. I mean, it was like vomit, tears, snot, everything, every bodily orifice was just shooting out at once. Like, get all of this pain and anger out of me. And as we're talking about it on the way home, and as my wife and I are trying to deal with it and unpack it, we were like zombies. And then we walk in the house, and there's our other dog like begging for food at the door. And I look down at him and I go, "Keep it up and you're next." And Lindsay laughed so hard and she goes, "Why is that funny? It shouldn't be funny." I go, "Because we have to be able to make light of this. Otherwise, I'm going to go in the darkest depression." That's right. It's not being funny for shock's sake. It's being funny for survival's sake. And it's embracing every aspect of the experience.
Brother, that's so true. There's life is a tragedy or a comedy, kind of a feel to this, and it seems to me that we need a way to release the pressure. It is a gift. Humor is a gift that we possess as humans. It really is. But without humor, I just don't know how in the world we would survive. Truly don't.
Do you think that if our society viewed death as more of a rite of passage, let's say like your bar mitzvah, or when you become an adult, graduate high school, would we have a different view of it? Would we be celebrating death and congratulating each other for going on to the next spiritual realm?
I think that question really reveals, Joe, your own struggle with how in the freak am I supposed to address this thing?
Please help.
and so what you did was poignant. So my sense is, Joe, that is how, God forbid, that is how you will die. That your death will be something that says, I'm graduating. I'm going to the to the next horizon. I think each person frames that narrative differently. I don't think it's a one size fits all. I truly don't.
I do plan on having fireworks.
That might be the cause of death, actually.
It'll be, the cause and celebration.
Oh, yeah, right.
She's going to be a human firework. Katy Perry said, "Baby, you're a firework."
But I think the golden nugget there was we need to talk about it more. We simply need to talk about it more. Like I need to be able to have people that I can talk about and say, how is it that I want to die? How is it? And I don't mean the manner of death. I mean, whom do I want to be when I'm dying?
Share.
Yeah. So those issues are things that, we move away from death as taboo. That's the point. We move away from a sense of, I don't want to think about that. Oh my God, that's so depressing. Oh my God, that's so sad. Western Civ, man, we are accustomed to getting stuff. We get married, we get jobs, we get degrees, we get houses, we get dogs, but none of us are as prepared to lose things. There's not a manual in Western Civ on losing things, on releasing things.
Losing things are awful, and I never appreciate them or the people.
She lost her keys 5 minutes ago. She
I
might
miss
lose her
it.
mind in 10 minutes. You hit the nail on the head, because the thing that I've had to unpack as an adult, and what I've come to realize is, at least to an extent, It's the idea of nothing lasts. We look at photographs and we're like, those were the best times. And we wish that that photograph would be a living picture, but it's not. And the fact is, I'm a control freak, so I try to control all of the things that I can't possibly control. And obviously mortality is one of them.
Yeah. And you know something, Matt, God, man, that's such a good insight as well, because, the truth is, this conversation I'm having with you guys, these are the good times, man. This is freaking awesome.
Well, and we're recording, so this is perfect.
Yeah, remember that.
Yeah. In case anybody really wants to know what the good times are, damn it, it was on that night.
Exactly.
I will tell you, every time I look back, I'm like, those were the good times. I think when I was living them, I never thought they were the good times.
We never do, because we like you said, it's nostalgia. We put that sepia filter on all of our past events in our mind, and we're like, it was beautiful, and Grandpa was there, and so was this person.
You know what? I actually beg to differ, because I've experienced so many shit times. I've experienced some garbage, and a lot of them have been because of my own doing. And I can definitely say after those bad times, I would take a look at me sitting around with the kids and everything, and just enjoying a genuine moment that didn't cost us a dime, and say, yeah, this is where it's at.
Well, that sounds like you're self-introspective, and not many of us are.
LeJohn, you're an actor. You're all about the moment. You're all about, until they yell cut, you are just living your best life.
I'm in there.
But to speak to what John is saying, there is a magic to being present and saying, something, man, I'm going to be here, and I'm going to enjoy this. There's also a magic in being able to tell our historical story with grace, with kindness, to tell our story more complete than the little critic inside of our own head. That's a gift, man. And it will serve us well moving forward as well.
And Alan Watts said, if you can't live in the present, you can't live anywhere. So
yeah, so Joe, you have been quoting several of my favorite people. Alan Watts, I dig that guy too, man. Yeah, you have some breath. Joseph Campbell, Alan Watts, these guys are they're all about framing the human experience in a way really that it can only be framed, which is through narrative, which is through story. So even if you study the sacred texts, they're written more often than not in story form. We're going to remember these moments, right? We're in them now. We kind of frame them as the rolling moment, but we're in them now. But 2 days from now or an hour from now, when I tell my wife about how this went, I will tell it in narrative form.
Open on the scene inside my living room. I couldn't go into the office.
My rippling muscles were bursting my shirt open.
Oh, so you've seen photos of Shannon?
Yeah.
He's the Fabio of Northeast Ohio. So not enough focus is put on to how do we live our lives so that those things, our moments of death, our final thoughts, our regrets, our whatever an afterlife looks like, how do we live our lives in a way that actually, adds meaning to all of those things?
Yeah, I think that's such a profound way of looking at things, because again, it speaks to what I had commented on earlier, that more often than not, we die as we have lived. When Jesus is walking through, and he's got his disciples with him, and they come across a person born blind, and the disciples asked a question that presupposed their bias. Somebody asked the question, who has sinned, this man or his parents? It presupposed that blindness is the result of sin, is the result of some behaving poorly or some sort of karmic justice. And Jesus did not answer that. He said, neither this man nor his parents. No, that's not it. But that God's work, that God would be glorified. So in that moment, it just, for some reason, it speaks to me so deeply in terms of the why is not answered. If you search the scriptures, the why is never answered. Why is it like this? Beat the hell out of me. Why is this person sent? I have no answer for that. Why did my sister die? Oh, well, because she got ran over and her organs stopped and her heart stopped. That's why. Is there any comfort in that? Of course not. The why is a lament. That's important because it's confusing. But what is more important is the what. What do we do in the face of uncertainty, in the face of not knowing? What is it that we do? We show kindness to each other. We love one another. We support each other. We're present to one another's suffering and pain. It speaks to the what we ought to be to one another currently. And there's a loveliness in that.
I love that. I love that because the what speaks towards action.
Yeah.
Because we can all say it, but what are we doing outside of what we're saying? And I love that. But Shannon, I got to ask you, does the look of death change upon each face, or is it the same?
Well,
when death arrives, it is always peaceful. When someone they have cared for dies, each physician is impacted, and it always looks the same. The physician, the provider, the chaplain, the social worker, the nurse are powerless to that which is going to happen. But the look on the person in the bed is peaceful. Just always is.
That's
incredible.
That's actually beautiful.
Yeah, seriously. I didn't expect
I've
that.
never heard that, and that is, man, that's just so nice to hear. Shannon, do you have any final thoughts that you would like to share that we haven't touched on?
I would encourage exactly what you're doing, which is to go there.
He said the title. Sorry.
I can pimp this shit. I know what's going on. I would encourage you to go there, but not just in a podcast, but each individually in each of our lives to go there, to the areas in life that make us feel uncomfortable. So one of the greatest sort of books that has ever helped me is a book by Pema Chodron. She's a Buddhist, and she wrote a little book called The Places That Scare You, and it has been such a help to me. So for me to go to the places that I would not normally go, or that on the other side of my fear is my fulfillment. And so I would encourage all of you as well to, as you personally go there, your borders are going to expand. Your horizons will become more vast.
I don't know that I could be doing this podcast now without reading it. That isn't just a plug for the book, but kind of a plug for that entire mindset and everything that you've talked about in this podcast, which is, and what this podcast is about. Don't be afraid to go there. We're scared about peeling back those layers, but it gets so much better. It's easy to go from making a stupid, corny joke like we were just minutes ago to jumping right back into the deep, to the heavy, and not feeling like you skipped a beat.
Yeah, that's the truth, bro. That is the truth, man. I feel very fortunate to be able to hang out with you guys tonight.
Thank you so much, Shannon, for being here with us today. And thank you to our highlight of the week for Snacks, Sips, and Sweets, the winery at Wolf Creek. And you can go to winery@wolfcreek.com, or you can visit them at winery at Wolf Creek on Facebook. And everything you just said kind of perfectly tees up our final song we're going to play from your son's band, Wolf Creek. The song that you told me on the phone, you're like, oh, you got to have this song. Can you tee it up for us?
Is it the one, how many different ways can you fuck up my life?
That's it.
Life is despairing and joyful. Life is amazing and shitty. And it's the raw sense and raw feeling of, I anticipated it to be this way, and it was not. It was the other way. And so the lament is so powerful. How many different ways can you fuck up my life? And yet, on the other end of that, goodness, life is still beautiful.
How many different ways will you fuck up my life? What new way will you find? fuck it up this time? How many different ways will you fuck up my life? What new way will you fuck it up this time?
We just went there. Now you can go to Instagram at the Going There Podcast, Facebook at Going There Podcast, or email us at goingtherepodcast@gmail.com.
This podcast is made possible by its hosts and Frame One Media in association with Lindsay Baker, Tyler Kubisti, Michael Madgar, Joe Calley, and Bobby Thomas.